But you fought basketball players, you fought strikers in the UFC, you fought a 50-year-old, Mike Tyson. Yeah, the money was there, but it wasn't the toughest matches in the world. Why'd you pick those fights? Because you could make money without it being much of a risk.
It's kind of weird because Jake Paul is extremely bigger than Tank. And I mean, but with it being a exhibition, it makes sense.
Against a 200-pounder, I think it's not a real fight. Jake just too big. Tank ain't gonna be able to get in from that jab.
StephenASmith didn't hold back when breaking down the Jake Paul versus Gervonta Tank Davis showdown. According to Stephen, Gervonta is one of the greatest fighters of this generation, an explosive knockout artist with elite instincts, timing, and power that can end a fight in seconds. While Jake Paul's size and reach advantage can't be ignored, Stephen A. emphasized that raw athleticism isn't enough when you're standing across from a world-class technician like Tank. He warned that despite Jake's physical edge, stepping into the ring with Gervonta could quickly become a brutal lesson in boxing reality.
Knockout on Ryan Garcia in April of 2023. Stephen A., is Tank Davis the most exciting fighter in boxing?
Yes, he is. He absolutely is. I love me some Terrence Crawford. He's spectacular, probably #1 pound for pound on the planet. I'm a Canelo Alvarez fan. Obviously, I'm a David Benavidez fan. But this brother, Gervonta Davis, Tank Davis, the time has come for the world to recognize this is one of the top 5 fighters on the planet. He might be top 3.
Yeah.
You can make a legitimate argument for him being 3, 1, or whatever.
According to Smith, Gervonta is one of the rare natural fighters whose reflexes and punching ability often put him in conversations with the sport's elite. He believes the size difference gives Paul a chance to land something decisive, but that if Davis handles distance and timing well, the fight could become a rout. In his frequent segments, Stephen A. warns Jake that hubris could betray him. Size isn't everything when you trade with a polished knockout artist.
Jake Paul versus Tank Davis, they just announced the fight. What's your instant reaction to that?
I don't know what's going to happen with a 135-pounder going up against a 200-pounder. I think it's not a real fight. Jake just too big. Tank ain't gonna be able to get in from that jab. Jake land one good punch on Tank, it's over with.
Smith has made it clear multiple times that he sees Jake Paul as more than just an internet personality dabbling in punches. He acknowledges that Jake has committed himself, training with pro coaches, building camps, putting in work, and that by those measures, Jake is behaving like a professional. But Stephen A. argues that profession isn't enough. Now is the time for Jake to test himself with real boxers, fighters who are his age, similar size, active, credible in the sport. Only that kind of opponent, says Smith, will show if Jake's really ready to leave the sideshow and earn respect in the traditional boxing world.
Jake Paul is a professional. At some point in time, I don't give a damn if it's a light heavyweight. Better BF, Bivol, a super middleweight, Canelo, Mexican Monster, David Benavidez, somebody that actually has a reputation. The time has come for Jake Paul to step into the ring with a cat who actually boxes for a living and give us that fight. I appreciate the fact of him promoting. I appreciate him having the cachet as a former YouTuber turned boxer. I like Jake Paul. I respect Jake Paul. I'm just saying, because I like him and because I respect him, I want to see him in the ring. And I don't want to hear, I know his numbers are better, but then he's going to say, I don't need Canelo. Canelo needs me. Well, wait a minute. It ain't just about popularity, bruh.
But you fought basketball players, you fought strikers in the UFC, you fought a 50-year-old, Mike Tyson. Yeah, the money was there, but it wasn't the toughest matches in the world. Why'd you pick those fights? Because you could make money without it being much of a risk. Well, if you're doing that, how you going to turn around and knock Canelo Alvarez for doing the same? Especially working in a sport that you yourself, Jake Paul, has called corrupt and abusive towards fighters. Now, I understand you're upset. You're a little bit salty about Canelo using you to get a better deal from Riyadh or him turning down a fight with you. But what you're attempting to do and what you have done to some degree Canelo Alvarez has done. He has fought Triple G. He has fought Mayweather. He has, I mean, even though Charlo's undersized, he was a champion. Terrence Crawford is a champion. By the way, he's not 140. He's not 135. He's 147. And then his last fight, I think, was at 154. And oh, by the way, he would move up a couple of weight classes. Now, I think Canelo needs to be fighting David Benavidez as well. But he did fight and knock out Kovalev at the light heavyweight spot. He did fight and lose to Bivol. He did fight Triple G not once, not twice, but 3 times. So when Canelo sits up there and says, I fight fighters, he ain't lying. His reputation does speak for itself. So I can't sit up there and flow with you, Jake Paul, on that one.
He has pointed out that Jake Paul really can't complain about taking criticism when Canelo Alvarez is doing almost the same thing. Smith argues that Canelo, a legit boxing legend, is also taking fights that look more about the money or spectacle than pure competition. StephenASmith has also challenged Jake Paul directly, saying if he is truly serious about boxing, not just the flash, the paydays, or the spectacle, then he should fight somebody his own age and size. He argues that Paul has been picking fights with clear physical mismatches, older or much smaller opponents, and that if he wants to prove legitimacy, he needs to step into the ring with a fighter who is his peer. According to Stephen A., that's the only way to truly test his skills, build credibility, and show progress, not just headlines.
I can't buy the hype at this particular moment in time. Now, I'll give Jake Paul credit for this. At least he's in the ring with a boxer. But 57 years old is 57 years old. And 57 years old and formally walking into a UFC fight as an audience member, as a patron with a cane, it's hard to me believe a year later that you're going to be in any condition to really fight. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't know. And if you're Jake Paul, here's what I want to say to you. It's Mike Tyson, that's fine. It's a money fight, I get you, and you want to make money. But at some point in time, if you keep telling us that you're taking boxing seriously and you want to be recognized as a big-time boxer / fighter, you're going to have to fight somebody closer to your age, who is a contender at the very least in the sport and who lives with it every single day. Could you please get in the ring with somebody? Pretty please, with sugar on top. I'm interested. But you fought basketball players, you fought strikers in the UFC, you fought a 50-year-old, Mike Tyson. Yeah, the money was there, but it wasn't the toughest matches in the world. Why'd you pick those fights? Because you could make money without it being much of a risk. Well, if you're doing that, how you gonna turn around and knock Canelo Alvarez for doing the same? Especially working in a sport that you yourself, Jake Paul, has called corrupt and abusive towards fighters. Now, I understand you're upset, you're a little bit salty about Canelo using you to get a better deal from Riyadh or him turning down a fight with you. But what you're attempting to do and what you have done to some degree, Canelo Alvarez has done. He has fought Triple G. He has fought Mayweather. He has, even though Charlo's undersized, he was a champion. Terrence Crawford is a champion. By the way, he's not 140. He's not 135. He's 147. And then his last fight, I think, was at 154. And oh, by the way, he would move up a couple of weight classes. Now, I think Canelo needs to be fighting David Benavidez as well. But he did fight and knock out Kovalev at the light heavyweight spot. He did fight and lose to Bivol. He did fight Triple G not once, not twice, but 3 times. So when Canelo sits up there and says, I fight fighters, he ain't lying. His reputation does speak for itself. So I can't sit up there and flow with you, Jake Paul, on that one.
Meanwhile, Jake Paul fired back at criticism by pointing out that he's relatively new to boxing, and this isn't something he's been doing his whole life. He leans into his entertainment background, saying, I was on Disney when these guys were already winning UFC belts, implying many of his critics have been in combat sports longer, while he was building a brand in show business. In his view, you can't expect him to start at the top of the sport overnight. That said, he claims he's learning fast and is in the fight game now, willing to prove himself in
You are beating up on dudes who don't box. They're not boxers.
I was on Disney Channel while these guys were winning UFC championships.
Okay.
You know, I was playing with Mickey Mouse while these guys were throwing arm bars and winning UFC championships. Everyone's, analyzing my career, critiquing it, paying attention to it from day one, but you can't tell me who was Mike Tyson's first fight. You can't tell me who Muhammad Ali, who was his fourth fight. No one knows, but everyone's seen all of my fights. I tried to fight Tommy Fury. Yeah, I tried to fight Tommy Fury, and he backed out due to a rib injury. Undefeated, young prospect. He comes from the Fury family. His brother's the heavyweight champion of the world. I tried to fight him, and he got scared.
Smith has been vocal about his appreciation for what Jake Paul is doing in boxing, especially the way Paul promotes himself. Smith admits that while he has many criticisms of Paul's choice of opponents or legitimacy in certain fights, he respects that Jake is showing there is a path for fighters to succeed without being completely at the mercy of promoters. Smith argues promoters have too often manipulated matchmaking, held up fighters' careers, controlled who gets big fights, and sometimes even abused their leverage. Paul stepping in, cutting through some of those traditional promoter-controlled constraints, brings attention, money, and new energy to boxing, and Smith thinks that counts for a lot.
I've always been a fan of Jake because I think that what Jake tries to do for the sport of boxing, I think people don't realize the importance of him being able to promote for himself and not being reliant on the promoters who I believe has held the sport hostage. The only critique I've ever given Jake, I just want Jake to fight boxers. Like Nate Diaz, we know his reputation. We know the man can fight. We know in the octagon he could be something special. But we know you breathe on him, he starts bleeding.
It's a fair critique. And you know what? He should fight boxers, but then again, should he? Because I'll tell you why. If you're a human who can rake in $6 to $10 million fighting people that you're going to beat, and you want to build a resume and a record that's impressive with a good highlight reel, you got to be strategic about this shit. Jake's 25, 26. He's got so much time.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, I get where you coming from. All I'm saying is, we don't know your skill set because you haven't been in there with anybody really, really skilled.
One of boxing's sharpest minds, Crawford predicts this fight is unbalanced in weight and that Jake's physical advantage might overshadow technique if he lands a single clean shot. He phrased it bluntly that if Paul lands one good punch early, the damage could decide the night. Yet Crawford added a caveat. Because of the mismatch, this could be more exhibition than serious boxing behavioral war.
Jake Paul versus Tank Davis. They just announced the fight. What's your instant reaction to that?
I don't know what's going to happen with a 135-pounder going up against a 200-pounder. I think it's not a real fight. Jake just too big. Tank ain't gonna be able to get in from that jab. Jake land one good punch on Tank, it's over with.
Teddy Atlas, a highly respected voice in boxing, has spoken openly about Jake Paul's rise and the sacrifices behind it. He acknowledges that, regardless of how critics feel, Paul deserves credit for managing to secure the fights he wants. In Atlas's view, this is not something that just happens. It takes persistence, investment, and a willingness to sacrifice stability for the spotlight. Paul has carved out a space in boxing that nobody thought possible for a YouTuber turned fighter. Atlas also pointed out that Jake has genuinely improved his boxing ability. He has put in years of training with top coaches, sparred with professional fighters, and learned to handle himself in the ring. While purists may mock him, Atlas suggests the criticism often ignores the effort and results Paul has shown. Many fans dismiss him because of his background, but Atlas insists that Jake's journey is proof of how much he has invested to reach this point.
That I gave too much credit to Paul. Why? He's done a hell of a job to put himself in this position. He sold himself. He sold his dream. He took his dream. He took his idea. He put it out there, and he made it happen. Give him credit for that. And he made it happen. And he took risk along the way. Yeah, he picked his spots. He's in the driver's seat. He gets to pick his spots. He's the one bringing the money. He's the one promoting. Yeah, he's the name. He made himself that, coming from where he came from, with all his followers and the whole thing, and just the uniqueness of what he was doing. But he has learned along the way. He's not a top guy yet. No, I don't know that he ever will be. He didn't have that amateur background and the things that you usually need to be a top guy. But he has improved. He is a work in progress. He is a guy that You got to give him credit that he's respected the sport. He went out there, he's worked hard at it, and he's gotten himself into this position. Having said all of that, this might be a step too far. Now, when I say it, I'm also, I try to be responsible. I've been in this game 50 years, so I know where not to step, where you could twist an ankle, or worse, you could break a leg or fall down.
Several analysts believe the fight has the potential to become one of the biggest boxing events in recent years, surpassing traditional matchups in terms of global reach and audience engagement. Their argument forward: Jake Paul isn't just a boxer, he's an entertainer, an influencer with a massive fan base that stretches beyond the sport. Unlike most fighters who appeal mainly to dedicated boxing fans, Jake brings in millions of casual viewers through his social media presence and mainstream popularity. This crossover appeal turns the fight into a cultural spectacle rather than just a sporting event, with analysts predicting it will dominate headlines, break pay-per-view records, and redefine how boxing connects with a global audience.
Sport of boxing than Gervonta Tank Davis. Now, Canelo's not a bigger global star than Jake Paul because Jake Paul is an entertainer outside the sport of boxing. That's why. So now you have people telling you that Jake Paul and Tank Davis is a circus fight. Okay? It's a commercial circus fight. On top of that, Jake Paul fights at cruiserweight and heavyweight. 200 plus pound, 200 minimum. Okay, his last fight against Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., former world champion, a son of a legend, was at, he weighed in at 199 pounds. He fought Iron Mike Tyson at 224 pounds. Okay, Tank Davis fights at 135 pounds. You have the storyline of David and Goliath that's going to push the entertainment part. Okay, that's going to get people to draw interest in the fight. Why? Because you have the whole David and Goliath situation going on. So again, that attracts people. Okay? So it's a sideshow. But even the sideshow, yes, it's going to be on Netflix. Yes, it's going to be a big event on Netflix. But guess what? They are fighting at the State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia.